All right. Well, we've got a small crew today. If you guys want to say anything, you could raise your hand. We could take you off mute. But I'm excited to walk you through this uh, stuff today. So, welcome to the Dashboard Dojo. Today, we're going to talk about an operating partner's request for analyzing the market opportunity of one of his portfolio companies. And so this is a real world request, and we were able to do most of what he had mocked up in Excel and build it out using a joined report in Salesforce. So we're going to go through the build of that, and hopefully there's some good. I'll try to be like Julia Childs. I don't have a glass of wine, but try to just build it out and keep it interesting. So please, if you have any comments or questions, please don't hesitate to reach out, and we can address them. All right, so I think most of you have been to the dojo before, but just in case you haven't, so the dojo is a place to learn the way in Japan. I visited a lot of dojos while I was living there and just found them very interesting. We have over 30 recordings, the most recent of which is Aaron Creer, who speaks at a lot of events around the world on the topics of reports and dashboards. So he was our last guest, and that's now live on the site. Thank you, Kyle, for posting that into chat. So just for the quick agenda, do quick introductions, talk about our sponsor, and then just dive right into the session. We do have a number of upcoming dojo topics that Kyle just created, and we've just posted to the site. If you haven't met me before, my name is David Carnes. I'm the founder and chairman of OpFocus, proud to be a Salesforce MVP. I'm a lover of this little tiny island off of New Hampshire. I might have showed this picture last year, but I'm just so excited to be going back out there again. This is on the Isles of Shoals, which are 9 tiny little islands off the coast of New Hampshire. I've spent over a year of my life on this tiny, tiny little island, all the weeks put together and summers put together, but I'll be back out volunteering a few times this spring and then go out with my family in the summer. It's just very peaceful. It's like stepping back in time. So our sponsor is OpFocus, where Kyle and I both work, and joining me today is OpFocus's event manager. Kyle, thank you for being with us again.
Very happy to be here.
So OpFocus, we're a consulting shop. We work with SaaS companies to optimize revenue operations, and we're very focused on the go-to-market tech stack, including Salesforce. We've been partners of Salesforce since 2006. All right, so we're going to talk about the request that came in. This is from an operating partner at one of the private equity firms that we've partnered with. It's a real world request, and I want to just walk through, like, when somebody shows you something, how do you think about it? How do you break it down to determine if it's possible or not? I've seen like requests that are completely impossible, and then this is one of the ones that was like, we can actually do most of this without a lot of work, and we actually just hammered it out and talked it through and got it set up. And maybe it took about an hour and a half, but I'll walk you through that. There was some foundation work that we needed to do. And once we had the foundation work in place, which was creating a custom report type, creating some formula fields, we then set about the task of creating this joined report. You can see the screenshot of the output here. But basically, he had a number of very specific calculations and summaries to help analyze the market opportunity for one of the portfolio companies. So we'll talk about some of the considerations and some of the data work, and then how we might actually take this further. Before we move on, I mentioned we have over 30 hours of recordings. I've got QR codes for past dojos on these specific topics. We did a deep dive on joined reports. We've done a lot of different sessions on formulas. This particular one talks about custom formula fields we'll use today. And then we did a hands-on session on custom report types. So if any of these topics feel like you need a little extra commentary on it, we've got lots of different topics on the Dashboard Dojo site. So I do want to share, in case you're curious, I've been using the same types of dev orgs for years. These are special dev orgs. They have CRM analytics enabled in them. What makes them useful to me or to us is that they have thousands of records in them. So they have 1,000 accounts, they have 1,500 cases, they have about 700 opportunities. They also have a tool called the Trailhead Data Manager that allows you to push the dates forward, which some of these orgs I've had for years and years. The main Dōjō org is the one from almost 3 years ago, and I just keep using it. Unfortunately, Trailhead Data Manager is broken on that org, so maybe I need to spin up a new one. But that Trailhead Data Manager is kind of useful because it literally pushes create dates and close dates into the future, into the present and the future, which is helpful with reporting. So this is the simple set of steps to set up one of the orgs that I use for the Dōjō. All right, so what's the challenge? Well, the operating partner at this private equity firm reached out and he said, what I need is, I want to know what types of customers should we be focused on based on how they've converted in the past. So he wants in a single report to see past performance, and he wants to see kind of current pipeline, and he wants to see some kind of a projection of the future. So we see a word in here, ICP. So this is the ideal customer profile. And this is a word that we use in marketing or go-to-market teams want to be very aware of who's the perfect customer. So he called it an IBM combo report that shows bookings, and a booking is a closed won opportunity in a lot of organizations. That's what the word booking means. Deals won, average sales price. So ASP literally is just the average amount of the opportunities. The win rate, and we'll talk about how to calculate that. And then OpDs is a shorthand slang for opportunities created by segment. And the word segment here just means industry in this case. So this same reporting could be used on region. It could be used on billing country. It could be used on sales rep. So we're not just limited to one type of analysis. This is going to be, what we'll do today is based on industry, but you could just aim this at other types of segmentation in your database. So just some notes. The operating partner currently is manually putting together this report. And the problem with manually putting something together is it's such a pain in the ass that you don't do it very often. It must take him hours to do it manually right now. So his goal is to have a tool which can be used for all portfolio companies. So he just repeats these steps for all the portfolio companies and then has the reporting that he wants. What I would actually suggest is that we create a private app exchange app, just literally just package it up, and that doesn't cost anything to create a package. And then you can deploy the custom report type, deploy the custom formula fields, and the report in any of the portfolio companies that he wants. So this particular request relies upon account and opportunity data being in good health within Salesforce. There's really no way to know as an outsider, but a good way to learn about the health of the data in an organization is actually to just start creating reports, because you start to learn what's in good shape and what might need some work. All right, so this is the challenge that came forth, and what is the person requesting the work. So an operating partner, this is a very prominent title within venture capital and the private equity world. And it describes a role dedicated to working with privately held companies to increase value. So that's really it in a nutshell. But what they do day to day is they work very closely with the portfolio. So an investor, let's say Insight Partners, which is out of Manhattan, they have about 200 active portfolio companies that they work with, and they may want this type of reporting. I'm not saying this is who made the request, but they have specific individuals who have the title operating partners, and they work very closely with the portfolio leadership to try to ensure that the companies will grow, that the operations will scale, and so on, and that they have the reporting they need. So this particular private equity firm has it's just under $1 billion that they've raised across 2 funds. They've made 10 acquisitions. They've made 5 other investments. So not a large portfolio of companies, but regardless of the size, they still need this kind of information on what's going on within the target market for the portfolio company. And really the key here is that they're not just seeking to solve this once. They want to solve it once, but then replicate it across the portfolio of companies they've invested in. So I haven't looked to see if I've lost any of you yet. Okay, these are all Kyle. Good. Okay. All right. So this is a mock-up of what was shared with me. And anytime somebody shares, hey, I've got this thing, I'd really like to see if you can help me with it, you really, really need to study what's been put in front of you. This is sample data that doesn't make a ton of sense, but in a nutshell, we have data that's organized by industry. You can see over here in the left-hand column. And then we have these columns of different types of information that, it was very clear to me quickly that this was going to have to come from a bunch of different reports, because we have account data, we have total pipeline generated, that would be won deals, deals that are still in progress, and lost deals. We have bookings, and bookings are essentially won deals. So we have bookings and we have won deals. This is just the count of, this is the number of deals. So if you took this and divided by that, you'd know the average deal size right there. That's what this number is over here, the ASP. And what's interesting is, in what he presented to me, he's got things that would be on the same report separated by things that would be on a different report. So looks like I forgot to populate this column here, but this deal win rate is basically, you create a report on all the won opportunities and lost opportunities. So basically anything that's closed, and then you create a summary formula that divides the count of the won opportunities by the count of the closed opportunities. Well, we can do the same thing based on dollars. We need to create a few custom formula fields to do it. So anyway, basically, he presented this to me, and we proceeded to talk through every single column, and I want to show you how we did that. So, specifically what I need to do, what you need to do, we need to do with whoever's asking for this kind of thing, is you really need to go through, what is the definition of each column header? Like, what are we really talking about here? Because the word booking in one organization may be different for another organization. Booking in this case is just the amount of closed won opportunities. And then this thing called won deals is the count of closed won opportunities, and so on. We really need to come up with the definitions. We also need to identify the source, because some of these things, the data may not be in a system. So if it's not in a system, I can't really put it on a report in Salesforce. An example of that is this TAM column here, which we ended up not solving for. We can talk about how you might go about it, but it was just sort of like, all right, we don't really need that, or it could be populated. We don't really need it right away, so let's just not fight that battle. Let's get the rest of them done. But you want to go through every single column and define a definition, and then what is the source? Where is this going to come from? And then, it's important, because we can't do this on just one report in Salesforce. We have to use a joined report, and a joined report is limited to 5 blocks. So the question then becomes, can we group similar data points? So an example here is bookings and won deals, and then ASP and age. So this is just the average sales price. ASP and age would be essentially how long did it take to close the deals. And these 4 columns are really going to be on one block, and I don't want to waste 2 blocks. I could use 2 blocks, but I don't really want to waste a block on. So we just negotiated. I'm going to need to move these 2 columns over. So pretty early on in the conversation, it was clear to me that this could only be a joined report, because it requires more than one report, and it needs more than one report type, and it needs a variety of filters. So these columns over here on the right are for open deals. So we need a report block that has the filter of all open opportunities of all time. Whereas for the won deals and the bookings, I need a report block on opportunities with just closed won opportunities of all time. And so you're really going through and just sort of figuring out the columns. So let's actually go look at that. What I did is, and this will look like an eye chart to begin with, but basically I went through every single column and I just added a few extra rows. So here are my 4 rows, 4 rows. Yes. So, basically what is the definition? This is what this first column is. Like, what does TAM stand for? It may mean something else in your business. So let's just come up with a definition, try to make it as understandable to everyone. Deals generated. What is it? Okay, it's the number of all opportunities. Great. And then we basically went through column by column to define a source. Like, where is this data coming from? Is there a source of data that you trust? And it was clear that a few of these columns were going to require a power of 1. So a custom formula field with the number 1 in it on the underlying object, like accounts or opportunities, which we could then use. It's a very, very powerful technique to allow you to count things on reports. So that was clear that we needed that. I did use a row to just try to highlight, and I use colors to just say, okay, all of these columns are going to be in one report block. And then these 2 columns and these 2 columns were going to be in the second report block. And then the won and lost deals was going to be my third report block on the joined report. And then the opportunity pipeline, the red over on the right, was going to be my 4th block on the joined report. So you kind of need to find a home for everything to see, can I even possibly fit all this stuff in? As luck would have it, we fit it all in except for one column that we just didn't solve that day, the total addressable market. And this idea, just in case you're not familiar, the total addressable market is sort of the assumption that, for agriculture, we feel like if we were to sell to everyone we could possibly sell to, we'd sell $100 million. For the apparel industry, if we sold to everyone we could sell to, it's $109 million. But for banking, it's only $50 million, et cetera. So some organizations will go through an exercise to determine the total addressable market, and they may break it down by segment. They want to see that on the report. We don't have a place to store it. We can talk about that after if we have time, some ways to do it. Okay, so literally I went through every single column and figured out what's the definition, where is the data going to come from, how am I going to make it happen, and then where do I want to put it. I also added a column for just some regular notes. So like I need summary formulas to calculate the win rate, and so on. So this is how we talked it through, and we just came to agreement. I'm using, I think these are called groups in Excel, that you can essentially hide and collapse. And I've got I guess I'm not even really using it, this column here, but it's just nice to be able to just sort of tuck things away, but keep the structure in there to help you keep your notes. All right, so let's, so, why don't we come up for air for a second? Could you guys use the raised hands? How many of you have been presented with an Excel file that you just sort of have to look at and scratch your head? Somebody either mocked something up or they've been using it and creating it manually. All right, so Bill, Carol, John Say. All right, so it looks like a lot of you have been presented with an Excel file and you just have to figure it out. So thank you for sharing. That's great. I find it helpful to just literally go through every single column. The reality with somebody presenting something to you in Excel is that there may be columns that they don't really care about, that you're reacting to what's been presented to you. You think everything is set in stone, that you have to go fight battles. I have made the mistake of not confirming whether everything is really important, and gone and tried to create all this infrastructure to support stuff. And ultimately they're like, oh, I didn't really need that. I'm like, well, it's on the mock-up, so you want to be careful and actually take the time to go through column by column, like I just showed there, talking about definitions, what's the source, You might even go so far as to ask, like, what's the data health with this stuff? Typically, sales pipeline's pretty good. There might be other types of reporting that you're asked to do that the data health is just a mess. There was actually one problem with the request, and it had to do with, I'm oversimplifying the request, that the industries were all nice and clean. They weren't. They had, probably 200 variations, and it became a problem because it would be too complex of a formula to simplify it down. A bucket column wouldn't do it because bucket columns can only have 20 buckets. In fact, bucket columns I don't even think work on joined reports. So there was another problem that you kind of have to go through every column to figure it out. All right.
David, before we move off of that, Victor had a question on if TAM is 1-to-1 with the industry, can you concatenate the two and show it as like agriculture, parentheses, 100 million, comma, apparel, parentheses, 1.9 million,
Yeah,
etc.
Victor, that's a really, really good idea. And one way to do that is to use a row level formula. Row level formulas aren't available in joined reports. There's a bunch of stuff you can't do with joined reports, but in another type of report, you can certainly concatenate things. One other sort of sloppy approach, non-standardized data, would be for every single account of type agriculture, whatever the number was, we have a field called TAM and we store 100 million in it. And in that case, you don't sum it up, you average it. So when we show TAM, we show the average. It would have the word average in it because it's Salesforce doing it. It's just not perfect. If this was a list of users, sales reps, you could create a custom field. And instead of TAM, let's say we use the word quota. You could have a quota field on the user object. You could create a custom report type. I mean, there's some ways to get around it, but we just decided they don't really need it. And so, but I appreciate that. So Bill said, any tips on making a joined report more readable? Do not look at them expanded, Bill. Always view them collapsed. It's completely unreadable. I think this one will look pretty nice. I think it's important that you relabel the blocks, and we'll look at that together. So let's actually dive right in. So I'll circle back around to that. All right, so what's the foundation of what we're going to build? We're going to create a custom report type called accounts with or without opportunities. The reason we do that is because we want to see the actual number of accounts per agriculture, apparel, et cetera. And we want to see the, we don't want every account to have an opportunity. We want to see the pipeline. If there is an account in that industry with pipeline, we want to see the opportunities summed up. But basically, we either need to use two blocks on the joined report, one just plain old accounts by industry. We could do it that way. I wanted to consolidate my blocks, so I used accounts with or without opportunities, and it worked great. So let's go do that first. Then we're going to create two power of one formula fields. If you've ever seen Steve Moe present, he talks about the power of one. There's an old page from 2015. I've got the QR code for it here if it's helpful. He credits Tom Tobin for coming up with or evangelizing the power of one. But literally, you're just creating a custom formula field with the number one in it. And that's what we're going to use to come up with the count of accounts and the count of deals generated. There are two reasons why we will do this. One, because it works. And the other is that record counts aren't perfect. So, and it certainly wouldn't work for what we need here. We really need to do it this way. Thank you for sharing the link, Kyle, to the power of one. That's great. All right, so we're going to create those two power one formulas, and then we're going to create two more formulas. And one is going to be if it's a one deal, just return the amount, otherwise zero. And if it's a closed deal, return the amount, otherwise zero. Otherwise, we can't generate this column here. Of course, it's so odd that I didn't populate this last night. I was working on it late last night. Basically it would look like it's a percentage, but it's based on the dollar amount. So the size of the deal impacts the dollar win rate as opposed to the deal win rate. The deal win rate is just how many opportunities. So if I've won 5 deals and I've won or lost 10 deals, I have a 50% win rate. But if you do it based on the dollars, we need a little bit more foundation to support that. All right, so let's go punch these fields out. I've got a brand new shiny org. That's not it. This is my brand new shiny org over here. And we're going to create the joined report first, and we'll just go right into setup. So I've got my sysadmin hat on, or you could be a user that has the manage custom report types permission. And we're right in this org. I think I'm a little too zoomed in. And there's nothing up my sleeve. So we're just going to create a custom report type. The primary object will be accounts. We'll call it accounts with or without opportunities. Usually just copy the label and throw it in the description. We'll store it just in the category called accounts and contacts. And we'll make it deployed. So the difference between in development and deployed, in development, only admins can see reports created on it. Only admins can create reports on it. Whereas deployed makes it available to everyone. I'll go ahead and click next. And then there's one extra step here, which is to associate the opportunities object and say A records may or may not have related B records. So instead of an inner join, we're going to make this a left outer join. I want to see all the accounts. And if they have opportunities, great, show me them too. But I really want to see all the accounts. And we do that by choosing this second choice. So this is one of the foundation items. We'll just punch that right out. And then we're going to go right to the object manager. We're going to create 4 custom fields. One is going to be on the account. This is our first power of 1. And we're creating a new field under fields and relationships. It's a formula. And I think there's probably a few schools of thought. I kind of like the idea of seeing accounts or something like number of accounts. So either one. Why don't we try this? Not number of accounts, and just notice that the special character doesn't go into the field name. So you might want to, if you do it this way, I would make this a number, and I would make it with 0 decimals. So we don't want decimals on this. We'll click next. Our formula is just the number 1. It's a power of 1 formula. When you're creating a custom formula field, so this is something a sysadmin does, there are 2 tabs. There's a simple formula tab, which is fine for this. Then there's the advanced formula tab, which if you use it once, it remembers your preference forever. Usually we work with the advanced formula tab. You've got the insert field button. You've got the functions list over here. There's just more functionality when you use the advanced formula tab. So we can check our syntax. That looks good because it's hard to screw up just the number 1. And just a couple of other points here. I want this visible to users. Great. I do not want this to appear on layouts. So if you're working in the professional edition in the olden days, and it's probably still true, in order to use a field on a report in professional edition, it had to be on a page layout. And that was something from like 15 or more years ago. Enterprise edition, unlimited edition, the fields don't have to be on the page layout. You can use them in reporting. Maybe somebody on the call knows if it's still true in professional edition. But basically, I'll go ahead and just save that. So 1 of 4 fields is created. Now we'll jump over to the opportunity object. And we'll go to fields and relationships, and always like a good admin, we're going to make sure the fields don't already exist. Doesn't look like they do. So we'll create our power of 1 on opportunities. I'll use the same naming. Same naming scheme, number of opportunities. Come down here, make it a number. Put the number 1 in there. That's good. I'm not even going to bother checking it. I probably would put a description if I was doing this properly, but I'll go ahead and make it so the field doesn't show up on the page layouts. I'm going to go ahead and choose save and new because we're going to create 2 more fields. The two additional fields we're going to create are these fields here. So we're going to create opportunity formulas to sum up we're only going to track if it's a one deal, show the amount. And the same we're going to do for closed deals. And closed deals are either won or lost. So we're going to use very simple formulas for those two. And this will be a formula. And this is the one amount. So I'm creating two formulas with the output type currency. I'll go ahead and leave the decimals. A lot of times I don't really care about the pennies, but we'll leave the pennies there for now. I'm creating two formulas, two formula fields for the express purpose of solving one calculation on a joined report. So this, we're going to start with an if, and then I'll usually indent, and there's a field we can use, which is just one, and it appears as is one. So it's a Boolean if is one, comma. Actually, let's do if is one, then we're going to show the amount, comma. Otherwise, we're going to return either null or zero. I'll just return zero here. So it's pretty straightforward formula. And I might even copy this to use for the other formula. Now we could, so it says treat blank fields as zeros. I think that's perfect. So the output will always be a zero. And just like the other few that we created, we'll make it visible to users, but we won't put it on the page layouts. So one last field to create, and then we'll start building our joined report. So it's one last formula. And this is the closed amount. The currency, two decimals. And once again, you see that it launched right into the advanced formula tab, which is good. I'll go ahead and change this. Instead of is one, I'll just use the closed. So these are system generated formulas, they're Booleans, which are true or false, which makes it easy to work with in a formula like this. So if is closed, comma, show the amount, otherwise show zero. Let's go ahead and check the syntax. No syntax errors, great. Next. And we won't put this one on the page layout. Sometimes I'll put it on a page layout just to confirm that it's working correctly, but I'm going to trust that this will work correctly. All right, so we've now built the foundation items that we need to support the reporting goals that we have. So let's start out creating the joined report. We're going to basically chunk this out into 4 blocks. So we're going to use our we're going to use the custom report type that we created, accounts with or without opportunities, to do this first few items. And we're going to show in some the number of accounts, the sum of the amounts, and the number of opportunities. And then we're going to group it by industry. We're going to collapse it so that it's easier to look at, and we'll save it. And then we'll make it a joined report and add the second block. So let's go do that. So we'll go to the reports tab. We'll create a brand new report. And what we should see in here is under accounts and contacts, our brand new custom report type that we created a moment ago. And then, so we just have a couple of columns here. This isn't, we need to do some work to get this going. The first thing I'm going to suggest is we can see that there are 2 filters applied. We're going to go ahead and remove the my accounts, the silly monkey wrench stuff here. I'm just going to clean up the filters. I want to see all accounts associated with the industry, and I'm going to want to see all deals associated with the industry. Why don't I turn on the preview so I can see some data in here? Let's go ahead and add the number of accounts. Let's add the opportunity amount. And let's add the number of opportunities. So these are our 3 columns. These are numerical columns. You see them show up with a lighter blue here. If I go ahead, and I'm just going to make sure that these are all summed up. And it looks like they are, which is great. So basically what we should see when we scroll down is there will be some accounts. This is how the left outer join in that custom report type works. There are accounts that have no opportunities. And similarly, there are some accounts that have a bunch of opportunities. In either case, I want to see the account and I want to see if there are opportunities. Great, show those. So this is working the way that it should. And if I actually now group this by industry, so this is starting to get pretty busy, but now what we can do is when you add your first grouping, you get the toggle rows down at the bottom. And what I can do is toggle off the detail rows. And you notice that the record count is here, and the record count really, this is one of the reasons that it's not useful. It's giving me the child record counts, not the account record counts. And that's fine, but just to avoid the problem, we're using the power of one, the 2 power of 1 formulas. I'm going to just toggle off the record counts. And here are my first 3 columns in the joined report. All right, so Victor suggests, please be clear when naming your custom report types. Calling something accounts and opportunities doesn't tell a user with or, oh yes, awesome. Yeah, I think that's so important to have the very specific with or without in there. Great point. All right, so our next phase is adding the second block to the joined report, actually making it a joined report. So we're going to set it as a joined report. We're going to add a block using the opportunities report type. We're going to relabel the blocks. So we're going to have target accounts and pipeline generated, and then bookings as our 2 block names. And this is helpful to get the naming right. To Bill's question earlier, to make it clear what you're looking at, make sure you label each of the blocks appropriately so that the label matches the filters and what the user's seeing. So we're going to label them, we're going to adjust the filters, and then we're going to add 3 columns into this second block. 4 columns into the second block. And we'll save our progress. So why don't I save our progress, because it's nothing worse than, so this is our market analysis report by industry. Awesome. I'll just leave it in the private folder for now. All right, so the magic in making this a joined report is to come up to the top left corner. This is considered a quote unquote standard report. You don't think of it as anything other than a report, but I'm going to change that to joined report, click apply. So a couple of magic things happen. Suddenly you have this color up here, you have a block name, you have the grouping is now changed to group across blocks, and then you have an add block button. So let's go ahead and relabel our first block. And we want to call this target accounts and pipeline generated. Awesome. You just click enter to save the block. I do want to double check that the filters are right. So I just want to see all the accounts in our system associated with, probably in real life, I would only show target accounts by industry, but maybe we're just looking at total addressable market, all accounts associated with industry. So maybe the word target isn't perfect here, but all right, so let's go ahead and add our second block. And our second block is based on the opportunities. You have a choice when you add a second, third, or fourth, fifth block to a joined report that you can include the default columns. That's a lot of columns. And to Bill's question earlier, these get really, really busy. You might not add all the columns, or you could add all the columns and then remove, I would say the less columns, the better in your joined report. Typically, when you look at a joined report, it's collapsed, so we won't see all the columns, but I'm going to leave it there, but probably in real life, I would just be very, very specific about the columns. Okay, so this is now hidden. The second block is hidden to us. That can be confusing. The reason is because I've turned off the detail rows. If I turn on the detail rows, our block reappears, expanded, hard to look at. So I'm going to turn it off again. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come down in my second block here and sum the amount. And I think I need to average the amount as well. And that should add our block so we can actually see it. And this is going to be called bookings, this block. So I'll enter that in here. Great. So we've got 2 of the 4 columns we need. The remaining 2 are the number of opportunities using that power of 1, and then the average age. So the age is already a field here. I'm just going to go ahead and click on this and average it. So we've got 3 of the columns here. The last one I'm going to go ahead and add. Oh, I put the number sign in front of it. So now what can be a little quirky with this, so it says sum of number of opportunities. It's sort of unfortunate. That feels like it's just too wordy. There's too much real estate here. So probably most of the time I just use the word opportunities when using the power of 1. Real estate is precious. This is just too wide of a label, but we'll leave it for now. If I scroll down here, I can see I've got the sum of that column. If I want to move it, it's very clumsy in my opinion to move columns dragging and dropping. In Chrome, it doesn't even seem to work. The way to do it is to show the detail rows, make this ridiculously large report. And then, I mean, this is going to take forever. I can just drag and drop this way so that it's to the left of whatever those columns are. I'll just put it. Let's see where it ended up. Oh, it only moved it, didn't move it at all. Oh, that's awful. All right, so then the old tried and true method is to move them one by one. So you know what this, I won't spend all this time showing you how to move the columns, but it can be a little frustrating. I probably want to get it exactly where I want it. So I can circle back on that. Let's go ahead and save this. So we've got 2 blocks done. And I'll collapse it. It's very normal to just go run a report while you're working on it to just see what it looks like. So this is starting to take shape. And it's very slow. There it goes. Okay, so this is starting to take shape. I would need to keep moving the number of opportunities over to get it onto the left side, but I can go back and do that later. Let's go ahead and add the 3rd block now. And this is going to be using the opportunities report type again. In the olden days, when you created a joined report, you couldn't reuse the same report type a second time. And in the olden days, joined reports would have a different color for every block. That changed 3 or 4 years ago, and we can reuse the same report type again and again, which is great, but it has the same color. That's the one thing that was a little odd. So let's go ahead and add another block. We'll go ahead and edit this report. We'll use the same opportunities report type. Again, I'd probably not include all the columns and then add them specifically, but we'll just keep going. Now, the first thing I like to do, won and lost deals. Okay, so we need to add 2 summary formulas here. So let's go ahead and add the 2 summary formulas. The first one is a simple one, and it's just the win rate. And the win rate is a percentage. And if you've been on the Dōjō, coming to the Dōjō for a while, you've probably seen this one before. Probably I would say I would throw an if function in here, and I'd say if the sum of closed is greater than 0, comma, then do the math. And the math is the won sum divided by the closed sum. Otherwise, we probably don't want to show 0. We do have the ability to insert a null. It's not like really supported here. It's not in the list of functions, but you can just have the word null be returned, and that'll work, and just put a blank in there. So this should work fine. So this is the, oh no. This is why you have to keep saving. That's so frustrating. All right, there's nothing like doing the same thing a second time. All right, so it looks like we have to add the whole block again. I'm going to get rid of the detail rows. So it's the one sum divided by the closed sum. I don't have my indenting perfect. It's going to drive me crazy. We have our output of null. All right, so that looked like that worked that time. I'm going to go ahead and just save it just so that we don't lose any work. Now that the block is visible, I'm going to just throw a name up here. I think I wanted to call it won and lost deals. And then we're going to add one more formula to this, and then we're going to update the filters. So I really should have updated the filters on the second one. And it's easy to miss this step, right? So each one you want to go through and make sure the filters are right. So the second block, which is showing bookings, is all won deals of all time. Well, we can just use the standard filters here, and I could just use closed won of all time. And I want to do the same thing with the third one. I want to make sure it's all time. And in this case, the opportunity status should be closed, not closed won, but closed. And that means won or lost. And that's how you calculate a win rate, is to just not evaluate any open deals, just won and lost deals. All right, so my filters are good for all three blocks. And I'll come down here. We're going to add one more summary formula. And this one is going to be the dollar win rate. And this is also a percentage, but it's based on a different number. So we created two formula fields. Your formula fields will appear all the way down toward the bottom in their group. So we have, similar to the other one, if open paren, and we have if the closed amount is greater than 0, because we don't want a div by 0 error. If the closed amount is greater than 0, then take the won amount and divide that by the closed amount. These are sums of the dollar amounts. Otherwise, we're going to include null, not null value, but null. Click apply. And we'll be in, oh God, not again. All right, we're going to skip this one. I should have saved it right beforehand. Oh, it looks like it, maybe it got it. Okay, how odd is that? All right, so I don't fully trust it. Nope, it looks like it worked. Okay, good. All right, so that's our third block. And we'll go ahead and add the fourth block, which is just the open opportunity pipeline. So once again, we'll come up to add block on opportunities. And we'll make sure that the amount is summed. And then we're going to sum the expected revenue as well. So the expected revenue is a field that multiplies the amount times the probability. And then we're going to add the power of one column for the number of opportunities. Once again, I would actually probably come in and order these. I'd put the number of opportunities to the left, but just for the purpose of this, let's actually go run this and we'll see our completed report. And I'll just double check. So we'll save that. We've got, again, I'd move these columns around. So this is what the output looks like, or this is what it looked like last night when I punched it all in. And I can see here, a great use case for a new report, a great use of any new report is to clean up data. there are 3 accounts that have no industry with a large amount of pipeline generated. Those accounts should be assigned industries. So first time you look at a report, use it to help you clean data. We can go quickly clean up those 3. And I can see the columns here, and I've got them pretty much lined up to these columns. There is the one column that I wasn't able to generate without a little bit more work and thought, but it's pretty exciting just how much we were able to accomplish sitting down for about an hour and a half and just talking about what each, really just understanding what was required. So this is really taking its sweet old time to run. So just a couple of other parting thoughts with this. What else should we do? We really want to ensure clean and correct data that's feeding each column in calculation. Just because you created a report, you're not done. You really owe it to the people who are going to use it to actually go through column by column and just make sure the numbers, like spot check that the numbers are correct, spot check that your formulas are correct, that they make sense. I find this particular one really interesting, that the win percentage based on the count of deals is so different than the win percentage based on the size of deals. But this really requires that every time that a rep closes a deal, that they have something close to the accurate size of the deal that they lost. You typically have accurate sizes of the deals won, right? That's how they get comped. Hopefully it's accurate. But they may not always be as accurate with deals they lose, or they may just leave it as 0. And that's going to throw this type of calculation off. So you've got a little warning flag there. All right, so here's our final report. I'm going to save it before it goes away. Oh, look at that. I forgot to relabel the, so this is why you test stuff, right? So our final grouping is called pipeline. So I'll scroll over to the right, and believe it or not, we can still add one more block. So you can have up to 5 blocks. This is probably the best example of like a really juicy joined report for industrial use that I've seen. And I was really excited to work on it with the operating partner. So what we need to do now, I mentioned that I saved this into my private folder. Nobody gets to use that. So we have to decide where we're going to put it. We might create a folder. We need to decide who it's shared with. And then I would actually schedule time to walk the leadership team through the output. It's very important that everybody be in agreement on what each of the columns are, the definitions for each thing. So I have an understanding of it. I might teach them back what each of these they already probably should know. But when you have new leaders coming on board, especially if you're growing, somebody may have a different interpretation of what something means from somewhere else. All right. So a couple of other things that we could do with this. We could do a projected amount. If you've seen me present on joined reports before, we can take advantage of what are called cross-block formulas. So we could replicate the win rate percentage, multiply that times the open pipeline, and come up with a projected amount, which is great. Sales leaders, it's great if they can triangulate on what the reality with the pipeline will be, like what deals they're going to close. You could create formula fields with the correct column labels, like using weighted value instead of expected revenue. So we can't use row level formulas on joined reports, but we could create our own version of expected revenue called weighted value and do the same averaging to get the correct column name on the report. I'd still want to sort out a way to track the TAM. Another thing to help your sales leadership triangulate on what the pipeline, what the deals are going to come in as, is to enable the free Einstein opportunity scoring. There are a couple of considerations. It takes a few days for the data to calculate, but it introduces a field called opportunity score, which is a number between 0 and 99, and you could use that. I just create a formula, divide it by 100, and multiply that by the amount. You have an AI generated weighting as well.
David, before we move on to the kind of finishing up here, Jean-Say asked if we could come off mute and.
Oh, please. Yeah, I'm
quick
sorry.
comment.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it. What's up, Jean-Say?
Hey, David, thanks for putting this together. Very, very useful. I've not had a lot of experience with join report, but curious to your philosophy or thinking around not this is around the TAM and figuring it out.
Yep.
Creating a custom object that has, you know, the industry and then the TAM, and then using that custom industry object to label the industry and then hiding the stock Salesforce industry field. And then we could add a fifth block and I guess do some sort of join. Just curious to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I think that's a great solution. I think that especially considering the actual request, which had at least 200 or 300 variations of industry. Like when we actually built this, you know, he had a nice clean list of industries, but they had, for most industries, they had like agriculture equipment, agriculture processing, agriculture feed, you know, like all these variations, like sub industries. And it was really a challenge. So what you're suggesting would allow for one extra benefit, that you could have the major category, like the word agriculture, and then the specific category, agriculture machinery, and the TAM all stored within a custom object. That's a beautiful solution. And then to just get that TAM column in here, we just have to add that
fifth block, no?
We wouldn't even need a fifth block. We could. So this gets into, I'm excited that you're asking about this, because this gets into cool things we can do with custom report types. So if you had a lookup field on the account to the Jansei industry, okay, so we have a custom object called Jansei industry, and we have a lookup to it from the account. What we could do is, when we come back in here to the custom report type and scroll, actually, I didn't want to edit it. If I scroll down, click on the label, scroll down, edit the layout. This is so powerful. I'm glad you brought this up, because I love talking about the add fields related via lookup. So we could add all three fields. We could add the Jansei industry name, the Jansei industry like specific name, and the Jansei industry TAM field. So if we use this add fields related via lookup, any object that has a lookup from accounts, we can reach up to, grab the fields, and pull them into this report type. It's not even just limited to accounts. You can also do it for opportunities as well. The objects that are in this report type, you can pull in fields from up to 60 objects. You can have up to 1,000 fields in this report type. It's awesome.
So this is great, but you wouldn't see any issues with hiding a stock industry field that Salesforce provides you with? I mean, sure, it could affect existing reports and all that, but you don't see any cons to that?
This organization has such a complicated mess of, they really need a better way to streamline the categories, almost like shuffle the deck. They need another field. They need a field for TAM. We need a way to store the TAM, and they need another field for like, what's the major category. So in that case, I would say, yeah, I think we probably should. You know, in worst case, Jansei, you could have what's selected in the pick list populate a value in the out of the box industry. So I might lock down the industry to just somebody on the marketing team or market research team, and then have some kind of automation that when that custom objects value is selected on the account in the lookup field, that you just push the major category value into the industry field on the account.
That's great. That's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, cool. I'm glad you brought it up. Okay, we talked about a whole bunch of stuff. We do, I've got some training classes coming up. I'm teaching my 5-day admin class again, the end of June, and teaching a 2-day hands-on reporting workshop in mid-July. So these will be updated for summer 23, which is coming out very soon, next month. We have 2 more Dōjō sessions on tap. I thought to do one session focused on security and permissions for reports and dashboards. There's just a bunch of stuff to think about reporting wise, like what data do people see? Even though you create a report and it shows you have the filters correct, it doesn't mean people can actually see the data. And then I want to talk about field level security and also talk about folder security. And then on the 24th, because the summer release will have already begun going live the weekend before, let's actually run through all the new release features. So I know some cool things that are coming. I don't know all of them. So the release timeline has been, I think it's the 13th of this month. Is it tomorrow? I think it's tomorrow. We can start playing with the new release features for summer 23. So, all right. So we filled the time, guys. I'm sorry that we ran over. It's really a pleasure having you all here. Hope to see you again in the Dashboard Dojo.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much.